We had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make?
And I look forward to continuing this dialogue in the months ahead. Thank you very much, everybody.
Wally, get your hands off Sam. Yeah. We're on. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Wake Up America. My name's Phil Marie. We got Wally Kopaczynski. And Wally's hands go where?
Thank you for reminding me what my last name is.
Wally's got good hands. He was an infielder, Hall of Fame softballer. So tonight's show, we have a special guest calling in at 7:05. His name's Dr. John Hall.
Continue.
When I bring an attractive woman in the studio, this is what happens. Wally loses all his...
Well, I get nervous around women.
He loses all his bearings.
I guess
Literally.
phone in.
Yeah, most likely. So anyways, tonight's guest is an expert on these use of satellites as weapons. Our guest is on. Let's see here. Hello, Dr. Hall.
Hey, Phil. How are you?
Doing good, doing good.
And I'll be here also. I'm a guest of Phil's. And my name's Wally K.
Hey, Wally. How are you?
Looking forward to what you have to say.
Good.
So, I was just telling the viewers, John, that you're a doctor, a medical doctor, what, in San Antonio, correct?
San Antonio, Texas. Yeah, I do anesthesiology and pain management, stem cell therapy, just about anything to do with treating chronic pain in the spine and joints, and do some anesthesia still too, but mostly pain management now. And of course, authored a book, and it came out in 2008 called A New Breed, Satellite Terrorism in America, and have a second book coming out about this same type of technology that's having covers put on it by the publishing company as we speak, called Guinea Pigs, Technologies of Control. So,
now, when is that book coming out, John?
It hopefully will be out before 2015. The editing's been done. That book was done under pretty heavy duress. I called in some favors with some documents that I needed to write it and go into detail about some of the history of how we got here with some of the technology we're going to be talking about tonight, how it functions, how it works, what some of the things to do to remedy it are, and had to go through some censorship prior to publishing, and took a long time to write. I actually had a lot of my documents stolen on one occasion, had to replace those, finish the writing, then go through some censorship to get it out. So some of it has been censored, but most of it is left intact, and what I had to censor, I tried to word around ingeniously. So should be a pretty good book. Now, the first book, A New Breed, for anyone that's read it, is the story of a girl that was a victim of this technology in San Antonio that I helped. It goes a little bit into the technology, but is mostly the story of what happened, while Guinea Pigs goes more into the technology and the history behind it.
Could you say the name of the book that you're going to put on the market? Because there are people listening to this, and this might be able to help you in the future.
Guinea Pigs?
Well, the existing book is A New Breed, Satellite Terrorism in America, and it's available on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles. The book that's soon to come out, soon to release, is Guinea Pigs, Technologies of Control. is the name of it. And kind of delves into a lot of different control mechanisms that the government is currently using. And not just our government, but just about all governments of most of the industrialized nations. So, basic tenet of the book is that most of our governments aren't content on just governing anymore. They want to control. So, and it's very detailed in some of the experimentation that's been done leading up to this, and some of the techniques that are being used to accomplish some of the things we're going to be talking about.
Now, John, my viewers are very knowledgeable, so there's a lot of stuff you don't have to worry about talking about. I've explained this to the previous NSA whistleblowers we've had on, and we have a great viewing audience, and they actually research a lot of this stuff. So I'm sure a lot of them are really looking forward to tonight, to what you have to say as far as with the different technologies. I myself have been targeted for 7 years, and I strongly believe it's some sort of, coming from satellites, just because of the nature of the pain or the nature of the shocks to my bodies, body parts and burns to my body, and so it's been 7 years, but basically 7 years that they've hijacked my, my life, and just make it a constant struggle every day. And a lot of people, as you know, go through this. You've interviewed how many people, John? How many victims of this?
At this point, thousands.
Thousands.
And I've looked at thousands of MRIs, thousands of X-rays. People come to me, come to San Antonio from all around the world to meet with me. I started some of the original scanning techniques that are being used now to scan for microimplants. The organization I work through is ISA Act with Jesse Beltran, and they've kind of taken that scanning a step further, just mainly due to my time constraints of still running a medical practice. But you're right. This has basically robbed the lives of thousands and thousands of people, and not just here, but globally. After A New Breed came out in 2008, I was bombarded with emails from just about every country in the world with people saying, we heard you on a radio show, or we saw you on a TV interview, and this has been happening to me, or this has been happening to a loved one, and we've taken them to see psychiatrists, and no one seems to know what it is. No one can fix it. And that's the big discriminator. If you look at the research that was done on this technology, almost all of it during MKUltra was headed up by psychiatrists. So, it's not a coincidence that this technology is designed to mimic mental illness. Its complete design is so that you run around telling people you're hearing voices and be attacked by, directed energy weapons, because there's no way to prove either one of those. The way the technology works, you're the only one that hears it. People standing around you can't hear it, and you can't see, directed energy. So it is, from a designer standpoint, if you're designing something to make someone normal appear paranoid, schizophrenic, they've hit the mark. They've done a good job on the design. And if you look back at some of the Army's research, their addendum on non-lethal weapons, they spell it out completely, that they say, imagine the distress that an enemy combatant will have when he begins to hear voices in his own head. And they go on to talk about the inability to record it, with a microphone directly on the cranium, or with any microphones in the vicinity of the person. So, it was specifically designed not only as a communication system, but I think as a weapon system. So, kudos to the people that designed it, because it certainly functions the way it's supposed to. Unfortunately, my take on it, with the sheer number of people you see being victimized by it, is that it's probably a form of experimentation. And I get asked this one question a lot, because in the first book, In A New Breed, it was kind of written from a point of view that possibly that it's technology that's been hijacked by criminals. I kind of had to write the book that way because I do have inside contacts to get my information from, and I was politely asked to not straight up blame it on the government in that first book. So in order to keep my contacts, I kind of did that. But this isn't technology that any one of us can just get on Google and download into our computer and have access to a government weapon system. You have to be given access to it. And if you look across the board at most of the victims, at least in this country, that it appears that the technology has been allowed access to certain groups in each state that do the majority of the targeting. Most of them, I suspect, are probably going to be former FBI or former CIA people working as private investigators, because these are the people we identified in Texas. And as long as the data gets back to the appropriate agencies that actually created the technology, that's all they're looking for. So essentially, it's subcontracted down to groups that are allowed carte blanche to victimize whoever they want to for whatever reason they want to, as long as the data on how well it works gets back to the appropriate agencies.
Now, you do a lot of stuff with the super soldiers, and I've seen where the super soldiers and mind control summits, and I was actually reading up on that, and I was quite impressed, and I applaud what you're doing to try to help some of our soldiers that have been attacked with this type technology, that have their lives now basically in a living hell, since they've returned here, and I want to thank you for that, John.
Yeah, that was an interesting conference, and part of the reason that came about is, this topic really doesn't fit anywhere. So, you could have a straight mind, and that actually wound up more of a straight mind control conference, but we're talking about something that's so foreign to most people. What your listeners are obviously pretty knowledgeable about it, but I'm used to speaking in other venues and some major media venues where you're talking to people that absolutely have no clue what this is. So that's why a lot of what I say is kind of tailored, to educate. But that is one of the problems, one of the issues with this technology and the victimization by it, is there's no box to put it in as far as exposing the general public to this knowledge. So a lot of times you end up speaking at super soldier conferences or electronic sensitivity conferences, or just wherever you can kind of edge it in. But the mainstay of defending the public from this technology is going to be education. Once the cat's out of the bag and everybody knows that this technology exists, well, then the victims that are being newly victimized aren't going to run down the same pathway and make the same mistakes as a lot of the people who were victimized before, namely trying to convince people who don't know anything about this what's going on with them, because the victims try so hard to convince everybody what's going on with them that it just makes them look even more crazy. So, once the cat's out of the bag, Putin has admitted having psychotronic weapons. Our government hasn't. Once that admission is made, and people, well, okay, man, you can put voices in somebody's head. You can control someone subliminally. You can attack someone with directed energy. Once people are educated, it'll be almost impossible to victimize someone.
Now, John, what do you know about well, obviously but the EEG back, 3-4 years ago, down at Yale, New Haven, they wanted me to take an EEG test in my gut. The neurologist was an atheist, first of all, and that kind of creeped me out. And he wouldn't look at me eye to eye, and I never followed up with that test. And then, months later, I started discovering that the EEG plays a big part with mind control and putting voices in people's heads, V2K and so forth. And I'm thankful that I never had that particular test done. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, most of this technology is designed to interface with the EEG. It's essentially brain-computer interfacing that's done remotely. So, the brain controls everything. I mean, if you control the auditory centers, you can make people hear things. You control the visual cortex. You can make people see things. A lot of times what you hear described by victims as seeing holograms typically aren't really holograms, but they're visual cortex generated images. So whatever the brain receives is what you perceive as real. So if you're having the brain stimulated to see a vase of flowers sitting on a desk, whether that vase of flowers is actually there in reality or not doesn't matter. Your brain's perceiving it as being there. It would be kind of similar to having a dream. While you're dreaming, the things you're doing and the people you're seeing and the people you're interacting with appear real, but they're not really there. And that's the same way you manipulate the EEG. And that technology actually came out in '74, was the first patent by Dr. Malik that discovered that you could bombard the human brain with two dissimilar frequencies, and each hemisphere of the brain will entrain one frequency, create an interference frequency that gets transmitted from the brain, and that can actually be received, digitally changed, your normal EEG extracted out of it, and then that EEG can be manipulated. And the big scientific term for that now is EEG cloning or EEG heterodyning. And that is how most of this technology works.
Now, obviously you know a lot also about the organized stalking, gang stalking, and this is what starts with people. And up in New Hampshire, in 2007, that's when all this started with me, and believe it or not, NBC and GE played a role with this. I had applied to a game show, Deal or No Deal, and the whole thing exploded like within 10 days of sending in that video application. And but the gang and organized stalking, a lot of people go through this. I know a few local people now that have come forward, actually in this town where the studio is, that they're being stalked. And I know that you've done a lot of work with that also. Who do you suppose pays these people? Well,
I mean, most of what I can tell you I know from counter surveillance on the group in Texas that does this. And the group here, I think, probably sets the model for the way it's done most places. The group here is a former FBI agent that hired mostly family members. They do hire other, kind of lower societal members to do a lot of the stalking and a lot of the breaking and entering. Guys that are, were kind of criminals already to begin with, that are easy to manipulate and will work cheap. So, and the stalking, I think, serves two purposes. For one, it puts the victim in a victim mind state. These guys are very methodical at what they do. They're well trained at it. It's based on COINTELPRO type stalking. It's meant to, to razz you, to get you upset, and certainly meant to make you run around and tell everybody you're being stalked. This, and just for in case there is a listener that has never heard of this isn't stalking by a loved one or by an ex-spouse. This is 24/7 stalking being done in an organized fashion by people unknown to you. That also gets the victims to start thinking that possibly they are in some kind of government trouble, that possibly it really is the CIA or it really is the FBI. And typically it's not. Now, in some whistleblower cases, it is being done directly by a government agency. But for the most common folks, there's no reason they would be under any investigation. And most of the victims, demographically, are professionals, educated people. A lot of them are women, housewives. I mean, it's nobody that's a political radical or a criminal that would necessitate being watched. And just so we're clear, this stalking is not surveillance. So, it's not a law enforcement entity watching from afar to see if you're up to no good. It's stalking, but it's stalking meant to harass. It's, walking up to you on the street and making sure that they mention what you did or what you said to someone within earshot, so that they know who you are. Harassing you at the grocery store, pulling cars into your driveway, shining the bright into your house, or trapping you between two cars where you can't get out of a parking spot. It's, but always around you. And, that serves, like I said, really three purposes. One, to drive you crazy, to make you complain of stalking. Because if you're a normal individual, the first thing the police are going to say is, why would somebody spend all this money to stalk you? You're essentially a nobody. So right away, that kind of sends you down the path toward a psychiatrist. For two, it does facilitate a victim mind state, because once you see how well trained these people are, that they can get away with being in your presence pretty much 24/7, and the police won't help you, then it automatically puts you in a state of victim mind state. And third, I think it's done to GPS you. We've focused a lot on microchipping, and I know all the victims are convinced that they have chips in them that's allowing them to be tracked, and the data is just not there to support that. So I think a lot of the stalking, and the reason it's done 24/7, is I think you're being GPSed by someone in your vicinity with a GPS marker, in order to get other biometric markers cataloged on you, whether that's a brain fingerprint or DNA residence, facial recognition, body recognition, whatever way they can track you after that without the stalking. Because we have, I personally have looked at thousands of MRIs, thousands of X-rays, scanned thousands of people, and yes, we found a handful of chips in people, but by far most victims are not implanted, at least not with anything that we can find.
Well, I've had people suggest that to me, that possibly I was microchipped without, my knowledge. But, when I left New Hampshire, I was 188 pounds. I usually weigh around 240. I was actually dying. I had to walk away from my house. Most of my family turned on me. Friends, high school friends from down this area, they still have a smear campaign, and they're looking pretty stupid because I'm getting ready to call them out by name, and then call out some of the things they've done in life, and let's see how they like it. But when I moved back to Connecticut, where I'm a native, John, I had several things happen to me, such as my sliding door was shot out. I had my well poisoned, my cat died. There was a huge cover-up with the health district up in Montville on that. I had a necropsy done on the cat. The postal workers or the neighbors were stealing that. I had to order it 3 times to get it to me. My truck mirror was busted when another truck crossed the yellow line and drove at me. My truck tires were slashed. The windshield was smashed on my truck on the highway with metal objects tossed out of other vehicles. A week later, another white van with Massachusetts plates was throwing out metal objects again. And there's been several attempts at creating accidents with me, but I'm a very good driver. I probably should have been a stunt driver, because these people will never get me in this situation. I had my back door kicked in last year by a drunk individual at 3 in the morning. The local police did nothing and told me there's nothing I can do. And so that was very unusual. People park across the street videotaping me. I've actually videotaped them videotaping me, and I should put them up on YouTube, because I have their faces, their vehicles, and their license plate numbers. And that's how I operate. And of course, people always, will give me like dirty looks and snare at me or something for just stupid reasons, like you said, at the grocery store, So I've been through a lot since I came down here, and I thought, Connecticut was a little bit more, had more integrity with the police and everything, because in New Hampshire, the police do not have integrity at all. So, but I've talked about this for over 2 years, and the people and the viewers absolutely know what's going on, and I warn them, John, just like you were talking about with family members. If you see someone acting different, don't just shun them. Maybe give them a little extra attention and talk to them. Maybe they're going through a similar thing.
You know, you have to, and that's true. And the family members really have to have an open mind. And you know, I'm a physician. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that mental illness doesn't exist. It does. And certainly, you know, I've had a number of people contact me that complaining of victimization that, you know, that might also have some mental issues in addition to being victimized, or might just have mental issues. But, you know, one of the discriminators against that is that, you know, paranoid schizophrenia and delusional disorder, I mean, usually, especially schizophrenia, starts at an early age. I mean, by 16, 17, 18, 19, or 20, I mean, usually those people, you know, kind of turn out. I mean, they were people who were never kind of right to begin with.